Single dad unleashes his military training to save a CEO from ruthless kidnappers. She changed his future. The rain was pouring hard on the city streets when David Cole, a struggling single dad and former Army Ranger, picked up his shift as a night driver for a rideshare company. He had left behind a life of combat years ago, now focusing on raising his daughter Emma after his wife's passing. Bills were piling up, and his worn-out car was his only lifeline. That night, a high-profile passenger entered his back seat, Victoria Hale, the young CEO of Hale Dynamics, a tech empire, dressed sharply, with an air of guarded confidence. She looked like she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. "Airport, please," she said curtly, eyes glued to her phone. But halfway through their drive, a black SUV cut them off. Another boxed them in from behind. Men in masks spilled out, armed and moving with precision. David's instincts flared. This wasn't random. "Stay down," he barked, slamming the gear into reverse, tires screeching as bullets cracked the air. Victoria's phone slipped from her trembling hands. "You're military," she gasped, ducking low. "Used to be," David replied sharply, swerving into an alley. "And they're here for you." The kidnappers pursued relentlessly, forcing David to abandon the car. He guided Victoria through side streets, his movements automatic, every sense on high alert. He turned a rusty pipe into a weapon, disabling one pursuer. Another came at them with a knife, only to be dropped by David's ruthless precision. Victoria, shaken, saw a side of him few ever would come: efficient, fearless. "They won't stop," she whispered. "My company's tech is worth billions. They'll trade me for it." "Not tonight," David said firmly. He led her into an abandoned warehouse, setting traps with broken glass and loose wiring. When the gang cornered them, they walked into his battlefield. David moved like a storm, using chokeholds, disarms, and brutal strikes. By the time police sirens approached, the kidnappers lay scattered, groaning in defeat. Victoria stared at him, her hands shaking. "You saved my life." David wiped blood from his knuckles, looking almost embarrassed. "Just doing what I know how to do." But something shifted. Days later, Victoria tracked him down. Instead of the guarded CEO, she stood before him as a woman deeply moved. "You're not just a driver, David," she said softly. "Your daughter deserves more than scraps of time between shifts. Come work for me, head of security. You'll never have to worry again." For the first time in years, David felt hope. He had only wanted to protect his little girl, but by saving a stranger, he had unknowingly rewritten both of their futures. David Cole sat in his worn-out sedan, the rain pattering on the windshield. He checked the photo taped to his dashboard. His daughter Emma, smiling with missing teeth. She was his world, the reason he worked 3 jobs, the reason he never slept more than 4 hours a night. Once, he had commanded soldiers as an Army Ranger. Now, he delivered food, drove strangers, and prayed his beat-up car wouldn't collapse before rent was due. That night, his app pinged premium passenger, downtown pickup, good money. He straightened his seat, unaware it would be the ride that changed everything. Victoria Hale entered his back seat without a glance, her designer heels clicking against the wet pavement. She radiated control, every gesture crisp, every glance sharp. But David noticed her exhaustion. Power came with enemies. "Airport," she said, distracted, scrolling through urgent emails. David nodded and pulled into traffic. But halfway across the city, his gut tightened. 2 SUVs boxed him in. He caught their reflection in the mirror, men in masks, moving with military precision. This wasn't random. The SUVs forced his car onto a deserted stretch of road. Doors flew open. Armed men spilled out, approaching fast. "Stay down," David barked, instincts taking over. He rammed the car into reverse, tires screaming as gunfire shattered glass. Victoria gasped, crouching low. "What's happening?" "They want you," David growled, swerving hard. And they picked the wrong night. He jerked the wheel into a side alley. Sparks flew as metal scraped brick. The masked men followed, relentless. David's eyes sharpened. He hadn't been a soldier for years, but muscle memory never died. He ditched the car near an abandoned textile mill. Pulling Victoria out, he guided her through the rain-slick shadows. "Can you run?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered, shaking. "Then keep up." The kidnappers fanned out, hunting them. David improvised weapons: a broken pipe, loose chain, bricks. One attacker lunged with a knife. David sidestepped, twisting the man's arm until bones snapped. Another came from behind. David swung the pipe, dropping him instantly. Victoria, wide-eyed, saw the man who had once been buried under bills and exhaustion transform into something terrifyingly precise. Inside the mill, David rigged traps from shattered glass and exposed wiring. "They'll keep coming," Victoria admitted, breath trembling. "They know who I am." David locked eyes with her. "Then we make them regret it." When the gang stormed inside, they triggered his improvised battlefield. Glass-shredded boots, wires-shocked hands. David moved through the chaos like a ghost, striking fast and vanishing. The kidnappers fell, one by one, to a man they thought was just a driver. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The surviving gang members scrambled into their SUVs and fled. David stood over the last unconscious thug, chest heaving, knuckles bloodied. Victoria, trembling, whispered, You saved my life." He shrugged, trying to shake off the adrenaline. Old habits die hard. Days later, Victoria showed up at David's small apartment. Emma answered the door, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Victoria knelt, smiling warmly at the child before turning to David. "I've been thinking, you're wasted driving strangers around. Come work for me. Head of security, salary, benefits, stability." David hesitated, looking at Emma. "Why me?" Victoria's eyes softened. "Because I've never trusted anyone more, for the first time in years." David felt a future opening in front of him, not just survival, but hope.